Hi, my name is Shari Queeney, and I am an imposter syndrome survivor. I might have said that a little more confidently than I should have, because I'm actually an imposter syndrome survivor in training. Being invited here to give this talk today made me realize that maybe I'm struggling with feeling like an imposter at times still, but I've grown professionally from some very valuable lessons throughout my career and feel passionate about sharing those lessons with others who might be struggling with some of the same issues. So let me paint the scene for you. I'm just sitting on my couch at home, petting my cute puppy, enjoying a glass of wine, when I see a notification pop up on my phone and the Slack message you see here, which is an imposter syndrome survivor's worst nightmare. Panic quickly set in, with my first thoughts being, Mike, are you crazy? I have never given a talk at a conference before. What could I possibly have to talk about that other smarter people aren't already talking about? Followed quickly by, oh crap, this is Mike Ryan that's volunteered me, who I respect very much and wouldn't want to let down. For those of you that might not know Mike, he is a core team member on the NGRX project along with Brandon. And for those of you who do know Mike, you know he is very persistent when he thinks something is a good idea. So I knew it was going to be pretty tough to weasel my way out of this. And then to top it off, when I started panicking to a friend of mine about it, he encouraged me to think about what the worst thing that could happen was and how I would feel after this opportunity passed if I said no. Well, the worst that could happen, I had already thought of, as seen here, barfing on the stage and passing out. But I knew I'd be extremely disappointed in myself for not bucking up and accepting this terrifying, totally challenging growth opportunity. So I did, and here I am. And let's all just hope the worst doesn't happen, because that would be pretty gross. And I should have had Mexican for lunch, but I did. So now that I had agreed to do the talk, I decided I should go ahead and think about experience that I have had that are maybe kind of unique that I could share. I thought, well, I've been in web design for about 20 years now, and I'm a woman, so maybe that's kind of a unique thing. And that led me to reminiscing about my career, how it started, times I rose to the challenge, and times I didn't, and how I wound up at the place in my professional life I am now. So just a little backstory on my career. Back in the late 90s, I graduated with a marketing degree and was working as a marketing coordinator for the Marriott Hotel. My job was to sell hotel meeting spaces to local businesses. So that meant I had a lot of contacts that I needed to keep up with. And being that this was the 90s, I of course thought, let me just create a little Microsoft Access database to keep up with all those contacts. Well, next thing you know, other people in my office started using the database I had created to keep up with their contacts as well, and it caught on. So I was sent off for some training in Microsoft Office, and that's really what started the career I have today. I became known as the Microsoft techie girl in the office, and people started coming to me for help with their PowerPoint presentations and Excel spreadsheets. And so I got pretty good at it. I moved on from that position to a government job where I supported my department by creating PowerPoint slideshows. That was all well and good, but I was getting kind of bored with that when a coworker of mine named Rob showed up in the PowerPoint people batch of cubicles and asked if anyone would be interested in learning this new thing called HTML, because there's going to be this really popular thing called the web, and we want to have a website on it. And so still confident and somewhat blissfully unaware young me said, well, sure, Rob, I'd love to learn about that. And little did I know at the time that that challenge, taking that on, would set my career off in a great new direction. And that's where my love for front-end design really began. This is also about the time that my bout with insecurity started. I was suddenly seated at the big important people table, which was completely new to me, and I was also very frequently the only woman at the table. And on top of that, I just had a marketing degree, and all these really smart, big important people had computer science or engineering degrees, so I felt inadequate and really afraid to speak up. And that's where the imposter syndrome portion of my career began. So what exactly is imposter syndrome, you might ask? Well, imposter syndrome is really just having a persistent fear of being exposed as a fraud. And I'm a bit sad and embarrassed to admit that I fell into that category for close to the first 15 years of my career. But I'm standing here as proof that facing your fears and challenging yourself can provide great rewards. Early on in my career, I mainly focused on just doing a good job and not rocking the boat too much. I took care of any tasks that were assigned to me and got as many certifications as I could. But I still had that nagging feeling that everyone else in the room was smarter and more qualified than me. And so I stayed in that same organization, same position for the next 13 years because I was really too afraid to stand out and take a risk of people finding out what an imposter I really was. But as sometimes happens in life, some pretty major unplanned hurdles were thrown my way in my personal life, and that caused a shakeup that I probably didn't even realize I needed at the time. I was suddenly a single parent of 2 great girls, and I needed to be able to afford to provide a good life for them. So that gave me the kick in my pants I needed to finally look for another position with more opportunities for growth. And the truth is that staying in your comfort zone out of fear is not always exactly comfortable. By avoiding risk, we lose out on opportunities to really learn about ourselves. So I pushed myself to take a risk and found a job as a Drupal front-end developer with NASA with a step up in both pay and responsibilities. I still worried that I didn't really measure up most of the time, but I was determined to work my tail off and try my best not to make many mistakes. And then one day, I had a call from a headhunter who had a job opening that he thought I would be perfect for and thought I should go for an interview for it. So I did, and I really just loved the company and the people that I met there, but I was pretty sure they wouldn't offer me a job because this was an IoT company. I didn't even know at the time what IoT meant, but now I do. They were working with the latest cutting-edge frameworks, and I knew old school stuff, really. That was all the fears and my doubts in my head saying I couldn't do those things. But I guess the interview went better than I thought because they made me a job offer, which then immediately scared the crap out of me. Now I was going to have to actually work with all these super smart cutting edge people, and they for sure would find out how much I really didn't know. I decided to take a leap of faith and accept the job and give it a go anyway. I had just given my daughter a speech about how being brave isn't really about not being afraid of things. It truly means facing your fears despite being scared of them. So I felt like I probably should set an example and go for it. I definitely didn't realize it at the time, but the decision to take that risk and accept my position at Synapse has turned out to be the most rewarding and professionally beneficial thing I have ever done. So, lesson number 1 I have learned and wanted to share with you is that if you are afraid of doing something, that is probably all the more reason you should just buck up and do it. Because chances are the greater the fear, the greater the reward if things do go well. And chances are also really good that all the little fears in your head will never even become a reality. Take time to think about what would you do if you weren't afraid? Write it down, say it out loud, tell someone else, and then just do it. Whenever you encounter a new type of challenge, it usually is also a chance to develop a new set of skills. When I first joined on at Synapse, I was still really intimidated by the level of talent the people I was working with all had. A couple of questions kept swirling around in my head. How did I get this job? And what's going to happen when they realize that I don't know what I'm doing? And I truly felt like I didn't belong and more of an imposter than I really ever had before. But turns out that was actually a good thing because it meant I was finally really challenging myself and stepping out of my comfort zone. I took on new programming challenges by working with a team of Python developers. I didn't know any Python. JavaScript was it. And pursuing that opportunity helped support my front-end knowledge by learning more about back-end development. In doing so, I inevitably made mistakes. My very first pull request that I did actually ended up introducing a bug because I hadn't tested it properly, and I was definitely terrified I was about to be fired. When my manager set up a meeting with all of my team after the bug was fixed to do a retrospective on it, I was sure this would be the moment I had been dreading for most of my career, where I really would be outed as a fraud and everyone would know how much I didn't know. But to my surprise, my manager started the meeting by saying, "We're not here to place blame on anyone, but rather to figure out what went wrong and how could we avoid that happening again in the future." I talked with him privately afterward, and he said making mistakes is just part of the process. And the only time I should be really overly concerned about it is if I make a mistake, but I don't learn from it. He reiterated that making mistakes meant I was challenging myself to stretch my skill set, which is a great thing. I know not every company follows that same philosophy, but even if your company doesn't necessarily see it that way, you have the power to view it in that light. I think it's something we can all instill in ourselves anyway, the belief that making mistakes is okay and that being wrong doesn't make you a fake. When people aren't scared to make mistakes, they learn so much faster and gain confidence. Up to this point in my career, I had never really been given the permission to fail, but looking back on it now, the times that I had made mistakes, screwed up and been vulnerable were really the best opportunities for me to grow and learn. And somewhere along the way, I also learned that degrees and certifications, while great, don't magically make you more confident and awesome at what you do. Life and experience do that. So the second biggest lesson that I learned from that experience was that making mistakes I have and realizing the world isn't going to crumble around me really allowed me to take chances and opportunities I otherwise wouldn't have. I was finally starting to figure out that maybe I wasn't such an imposter after all, and at least that maybe a lot more of us felt like imposters at times than I realized. So if you're like me and have let insecurities and fear of failure hold you back from new career challenges, I just want to let you know that you're not alone. According to an article in the International Journal of Behavioral Science, an estimated 70% of people experience these imposter feelings at some point in their career. And for some reason, finding out that some really talented, famous people have the same issues I do makes me feel better. So, turns out some very successful and well-known people have battled with imposter syndrome as well. Tom Hanks, David Bowie, Sheryl Sandberg, Tina Fey, John Steinbeck, and Maya Angelou, just to name a few. An important step in moving past the fears of being an imposter is to acknowledge those thoughts and feelings and put them in perspective. Ask yourself, does that help or hinder me? The main difference between someone who experiences imposter syndrome and someone who doesn't is how they respond to the challenges in their life. According to imposter syndrome expert Valerie Young, people who don't feel like imposters are no more intelligent or competent or capable than the rest of us. Learning to value constructive criticism, understanding that you're actually slowing your team down when you don't ask for help, or remembering that the more you practice a skill, the better you will get at it can all help. The third career lesson that I'd like to share is how important it is to find a mentor. There are probably people in your company that you look up to and are impressed by, so why not take a chance and approach them about being a mentor to you? It honestly never occurred to me as something that could be so important in the growth of my career until a few years ago when I began working on a team with one of the sharpest women I have ever had the privilege of working with. Megan was a leader on our team and had impressed from day one with just how vast her technical knowledge was and how she rose to every challenge that was put in front of her. I respected her very much, but I didn't initially think of her as a mentor, mostly because she was more than 20 years younger than me. But after working with her for a bit, I realized that that might be just the right person that I needed as a mentor at that point in my career. I was feeling a bit stagnant and set in my ways as far as front-end development went. And here was this young person with so much current technical knowledge and expertise to share. Admittedly, I was again worried about looking stupid in front of her, having someone think I don't have a clue, but it turns out it was much more beneficial than I could have even known at the time. It really reinvigorated me and helped me to realize how important it was to always take the time to stay current in technology, and pointed my career in a new direction by prompting me to look into some of the newer front-end frameworks that set me on my way as an Angular developer. So I challenge you to seek out a mentor, maybe even someone you wouldn't initially think of, and give it a try. It just may bring about opportunities that you never saw coming and will likely provide you the chance to learn, grow, and improve. And if you've never thought of yourself as a mentor, this might be the perfect time for you to step up and find the people on your team or in your organization that need that extra encouragement to go for big things and to help them get there. It can help you reveal skills that you took for granted, and you'll also likely uncover new strengths in the process. Knowing you are helping someone in their journey can be very empowering, and it makes you even more valuable to your organization as an employee who cares as much about others' success as they do your own. Another mentor that I'm so thankful for has definitely filled that valuable role in our organization and is the same person that gave me the push I needed to do this talk for you today. Getting to collaborate on a UI team with people like Mike and Brandon has not only given me so much more insight into best practices for front-end development, but it's also been hugely beneficial to helping move my career forward. And taking on those various public speaking opportunities that Mike has extended to me, as well as leadership opportunities on my team, has helped me to feel so much more professionally confident in myself and helped make me more valuable to my company in the process. I will be forever grateful to all the people throughout my career that have gently pushed me when I needed pushing, provided great advice and insight when I needed it, and believed in me. The fourth career lesson that I have learned came from the point in my career where I was ready to pursue a promotion to senior software engineer. I was in a one-on-one meeting with my manager to go over goals for the upcoming year, and so I brought it up that moving to the next level was really one of my biggest goals for that year. As we began discussing what I needed to do to get there, he said, well, Shari, sometimes you just have to get out of the passenger seat and drive instead. That really struck a chord with me because it became clear that I felt safe and sound in that passenger seat and was content with that, but it truly wasn't helping me to grow. Making that a priority over the next year helped me to eventually reach that goal. One of the ways I accepted the challenge my manager had laid out for me was to work hard over the next year to speak up and assert my ideas on UI design for upcoming projects. That helped to establish myself as the person on our team that people came to when they had UI design questions. And in turn, this really helped me feel more confident in my professional abilities. Had I not done that and just expected that people would recognize that I must be doing a good job behind the scenes, I doubt I would have been able to achieve that. There are times when you need passengers and not a bunch of drivers trying to steer that same car, but if you aren't willing to put yourself out there and take the reins from time to time, then you and others may never know how much you can achieve. And that brings me to the fifth important career lesson I've learned. The need to set goals that scare you and also excite you at the same time when you start to feel a bit stagnant in your career. Recently, I was talking with my project manager and he told me, you've done a really good job here and you're really well thought of. Everybody in the company likes you, but I would just like you to take some chances and push yourself further. I think you could really do some great things. He mentioned being a thought leader, introducing new ideas to the company and never being afraid to try something new, but also being willing to pivot if it turns out not to be the best choice. We have to charge ourselves with keeping our perspective fresh by looking at those new ideas and step out on a limb to share those ideas. In closing, I would like to challenge each of you to stop and think next time an opportunity that you may have initially played it safe on and passed comes your way. Instead, make the decision to be brave, to do the thing even when you're terrified that you might barf on the floor, probably especially when you're terrified you might barf on the floor. And if you make a mistake while doing so, view it as a learning opportunity and use it to grow and better yourself. Find a great mentor that will challenge you to move out of your comfort zone and get out of the passenger seat and drive your career. And set goals that make you feel a little scared, but also pretty excited to keep your professional growth from becoming stagnant. And I actually have a new goal that I got yesterday to one day be brave enough to get on this stage and do a 2-minute rap in front of a group full of people like this. So Terry, you are awesome and inspiring. So we'll see whether that happens or not. To this date, I am still so thankful that I didn't just stick with the safe route 4 years ago and instead took a risk with a new career challenge, because the growth that I've experienced from working directly with such a talented development team has been exponentially greater than all of the first 15 years prior to that. Even though it can be intimidating still at times, it also has made my excitement for new opportunities, challenges, and facing down my fears greater than it's ever been. Those 5 career lessons helped bring me to a place professionally that I never thought I could be, and my hope is that they could do the same for you. Pick 1 or 2 of these and give it a try and see where it could take you. You might just land yourself on a stage giving a talk to hopefully help inspire people with your own story. Thank you.